Stratus Building was an old, forgotten structure in the middle of a modern city. With its more than 50 floors, broken windows, and peeling walls, it seemed to be a witness to a dark past. It was a place no one dared approach. Macabre stories surrounded the building, especially about its elevator, which supposedly took people to places from which they never returned. For many, it was just an urban legend, a tale to scare the curious. However, for Lucas, Mariana, Jorge, and Rafaela, 4 friends seeking thrilling adventures, the Stratus Building seemed like the perfect challenge. That night, armed with flashlights and nervous laughter, they decided to break into the building. The front door was ajar, as if waiting for them. Upon entering the lobby, the smell of mold and the oppressive silence surrounded them. Everything there seemed dead, except for the elevator, which stood out at the back of the lobby with its rusted metal doors. Lucas, always the bravest, pressed the elevator button, and the metallic sound of the gears echoed through the building's walls. The elevator slowly descended, as if waking from a long sleep. When the doors opened with a loud creak, the 4 friends exchanged glances, feeling the tension rising. The elevator's interior was outdated. The wooden walls were cracked, and a stained mirror covered one of them. Lucas pressed the button for the top floor, the 50th, and the doors closed with a violent slam. The elevator began to rise, and right from the first few floors, something felt off. The usual sound of the gears became increasingly grave, as if the elevator was entering another world. Mariana was the first to notice something strange. The ground floor button, which would take them back, had disappeared. In its place, there was only a void, a black hole on the control panel. The elevator lights began to flicker uncontrollably until they completely went out. The elevator jerked violently and stopped, throwing them against the walls. In the darkness, Rafaela, terrified, screamed, and Lucas tried to calm the group, though his own voice trembled with fear. They decided to force the elevator doors open to try to escape, but what they saw on the other side left them paralyzed. Instead of a corridor or a floor, it was only infinite darkness. A black abyss stretched before them, with no walls, ceiling, or floor, just emptiness. In the distance, lights began to flicker, revealing shapes moving quickly towards them. Desperate, the friends managed to close the elevator doors, and as if it were alive, the elevator began descending again, now at a terrifying speed. The display on the control panel showed negative numbers, indicating floors that shouldn't exist. -1, -2, -3. It seemed like they were being pulled into a place far below the building, into a hidden hell deep underground. The elevator stopped abruptly on floor -13. The doors opened silently, revealing a black marble corridor, lit only by flickering candles. A smell of sulfur and burnt flesh invaded the elevator, and the fear in the air was palpable. Even so, an invisible force seemed to draw them out. Hesitant, the 4 friends stepped out, their footsteps echoing through the corridor. At the end, there was a red door. Lucas, with no other option, was the first to turn the handle. Behind the door, a circular room full of mirrors awaited them. However, when they looked into the mirrors, they didn't see themselves as they should. Instead of their normal reflections, distorted and macabre versions of themselves stared back, faces twisted into expressions of pure terror, empty eyes, and mouths open in silent screams. Before they could react, the mirrors began to vibrate, and one by one, the distorted versions of the friends started stepping out of the mirrors, walking toward them with slow, terrifying steps. Lucas tried to run, but his own distorted version was faster. It grabbed him forcefully, and in a supernatural motion, pulled him into the mirror. Lucas's scream echoed through the room as he disappeared into the reflection, as if he had never existed. Jorge tried to fight his evil version, but he was easily overpowered and dragged into one of the mirrors as well. His scream was muffled by the silence that followed. Rafaela, in complete despair, ran towards the exit door, but it had disappeared. There was no escape. Her distorted version, with blank, expressionless eyes, grabbed her by the arms and dragged her, her screams echoing until they faded. Only Mariana remained, trembling in the center of the room, surrounded by the macabre reflections of her friends. As she looked into the mirror that reflected her own image, she saw that her distorted version wasn't aggressive. It smiled, but the smile was empty, devoid of any humanity. Mariana's reflection whispered something incomprehensible before disappearing along with all the other reflections. The room dissolved into absolute darkness, and when Mariana came to, she was back in the elevator, alone. The doors opened to the Stratus Building's lobby, exactly as it had been before. Everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened. Dazed and in shock, she stumbled out of the elevator and ran outside the building. Her friends were nowhere to be found, and her attempts to call them met with silence. As she looked back, she saw the elevator doors slowly closing, and for a brief moment, a distant sound of distorted laughter echoed from inside the building. Lucas, Jorge, and Rafaela were never seen again. Mariana carried the terror of that night forever, knowing that something or someone still inhabited the elevator of the Stratus Building, and the building, with its dark secrets, remained forgotten by the rest of the world until a new group of curious souls dared to challenge the curse.